Mayor Mike Duggan, great to have you here with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So 10 months. You have 10 months left in your term as mayor. I can remember really clearly your announcement that you were going to seek the role of mayor in 2013. A lot has changed since then. The city is a really, really different place. At the same time, for some people, it's not as changed as we might hope it should be. You know, I've been thinking a lot about last year and these huge highs we hit over and over last year with the draft and the opening of Michigan Central. And then just in the last few weeks, you know, we've been reminded of the other end of things in Detroit, with some children dying in a car parked in a casino garage, and this water main break in Southwest Detroit. So I want to start with you just kind of giving us an overall picture of where you think things are in the city as you prepare to leave it for other things, and talk about that gap that still exists and what levers the mayor can or should be pulling to address those kinds of things, as well as celebrate things like the draft and the train station.
Well, the things that we try to do every day, of course, in 2014, the ambulances didn't show up for an hour. Half the street lights were out. The children couldn't play in the park because the grass wasn't cut all summer. We had a 20% unemployment rate. And it has been every day trying to create opportunities for all Detroiters. So that's what we've been about. Some of the things have been covered more visibly than others, but if you were in our staff meetings, we are just as focused on the fact that we've built $1.2 billion in new affordable housing just in the last 6 years. Every single one of those was a project that took a good deal of work, but we're very conscious of the fact of creating a city where there's room for everybody. Today, I just cut the ribbon on 53 affordable apartment units starting at $450 a month right next to Ford Field and Comerica Park.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of city that we're building. And, you know, I look at the Jeep plant with 5,000 jobs, and I made a deal with what was then Fiat Chrysler, now it's Stellantis. And I said, we'll give you the 200 acres you need. I want one promise, that you'll interview Detroiters first for the job.
Yeah.
We had 5,000 Detroiters hired, $60,000 jobs in benefits. You're basically talking about moving 5,000 families to the middle class.
Yeah.
But we have a lot more to go. And so every day it's a step in the right direction.
So with this family that was sleeping in the casino garage, I kind of see two problems. One is the safety net that exists that should catch families like that who are, you know, in that kind of situation before they get to the point where they're sleeping in a garage. The second is the move to opportunity that prevents them from being in that space in the first place. And in the case of that family, both of those fail for whatever reason. What are we doing wrong that's not catching families like that? What do we need to do better that would catch them?
Yeah, so in the last couple of years, we took 2,000 people who have been unemployed for 6 months in Jumpstart and got them into training and a job. Now, when you're interacting with folks who haven't worked in 6 months, likely a lot going on in their lives, their confidence is shot and the like. And so those are 2,000 successful families. We need 20,000 successful families, and we'll keep going the right direction. The tragedy on the Williams-Curry family was that we put a safety net in place a month after this family last had contact with us, and that's the part that I'm having so much trouble accepting.
What's that safety net?
So you call the CAM network, you hear about this, the phone calls that go in.
Yeah.
3/4 of the people who call are housed when they call. I'm on a friend's couch. I'm staying with a neighbor. And what the CAM system is doing is, by and large, prioritizing between people who are housed at the time they call. And Ms. Williams had called at times when her family was housed. But last winter, the Detroit police told me they were finding people on the street and they didn't have a place to take them to. I said, we're going to have a safety net system that if you're unsheltered, you're really on the street, you go immediately to shelter where you're taken care of, no call to CAM, no bureaucracy, And on December 16th, we opened up 2 centers with 110 beds that the police, the social workers, the outreach workers can take everybody and nobody is refused.
Right.
That system has worked for everybody they have found on the street or have reached out since mid-December. What the system didn't do was look
back
in parking structures for people in cars. And we're looking at, should we be more vigorously looking at people staying in cars? Our outreach workers, they pretty well know where you'll find people on sidewalks or in underpasses. And as you know, most of the people who are out choose not to go to a shelter, but we still have contact with them every week. Our outreach workers know them by name. And if it gets particularly cold, maybe they change their minds. But the fact that this family last had contact with our system a month before the safety net went into place is something that's just deeply troubling. We didn't follow up. The police and the outreach workers never ran across them because they weren't looking in the parking structures, and it's a hard one to accept.
Yeah. The other side of this, of course, is moving people from that kind of emergency status to stability and ultimately to a kind of a middle-class economic status. All the numbers say we're doing that in important ways. And Detroit Future City has really, I think, produced a lot of information about how that's working. From your chair, what's working there? What are you guys doing that is moving people into
I think the job that Terry Weems is doing at Detroit at Work is amazing. And the Jumpstart program, where we went out to people who've been unemployed for 6 months. So we had Federal American Rescue Plan money to pay people. But today, if you do not have a GED degree, your earning potential over your life is very limited. We'll pay you $10 an hour to take classes. You can take them online. If you've got a job right now, you can take them online nights and weekends to boost your pay. If you can't qualify for GED because you don't read an 8th grade level, we'll pay you $10 an hour for literacy courses, and as long as you're advancing, we will keep doing this. So we've created opportunities for folks who want them, and as I say, thousands of people have taken advantage. And we just need to continue to build that culture that everybody knows that if I want to earn more money, Detroit at Work is a way, because the truth is you earn what you learn, and we provide that path.
The other issue that we've come across, of course, is a reminder of our infrastructure and how much attention it needs. It's billions of dollars to catch up on delayed maintenance with especially water infrastructure. Why hasn't that moved faster?
It has. I mean, they're spending $50 million a year upgrading the system. If you go back and look at the news reports for 2014, we had cars frozen in streets with broken water mains all over the city. It happened 100+ times. What Gary Brown and the Water Department have gone through the most vulnerable areas, shored them up, put in liners where it's appropriate, and the number has reduced. That doesn't mean when you've got a system that's essentially 100 years old and you have a freezing time, and we will see whether the ground shift caused it. We don't know yet what caused it. But normally, what you see is a water main break of a small water main in a neighborhood. This is the first time in Detroit that we had the massive, basically 6-foot water main that's bringing the water from the Detroit River collapse. And it was just stunning how fast it put that neighborhood underwater. It was also very impressive how fast we got the water back down. But I just came from there again. I'm out there 2 or 3 days a week and just talking to neighbors and following up. But the reality is we have an infrastructure that was built in the last century, and we have a lot of work to do.
But even at the pace of $50 million a year, we're not catching up. I mean, the hole's being dug quicker than we're filling it.
I don't think there's any question. It is getting better every single year. We are seeing far fewer. If you drive through the city, again, I'll take it back. If you drove through the city in a rainstorm in 2016, the streets flooded everywhere. We bought these 8 Vector trucks and went in and unclogged those drains. The drainage is dramatically better throughout the city. It's not something people notice every day, but Gary Brown has dramatically improved it. We went into the areas that had the most basement backup And we did the most work. We cut roots out of sewer lines so that they didn't back up. Every year gets better, but 20 years from now, it's still possible. And I just saw, somebody just sent me a TV story about a water main break that happened in Grand Rapids that flooded the houses last summer. So this is an issue everywhere, but right now, all I care about is basically the 400 houses in Southwest Detroit.
So if you think about those two problems, these are intrinsic problems that cities face with infrastructure, with poverty. What do you see as the opportunity for the next mayor to build on what's happening? And what do you see as the challenges, the things that person's going to have to do more of or be more aggressive about to move things faster? The only hesitation I had, and I by and large feel like I did what I came to do in 12 years was enough, is what is happening with the violence rate is remarkable. I mean, almost 400 homicides the year before I ran, down to 200 last year. We're down again so far this year. Boston last year had 28. It is possible to get violence down. We're using a number of the Boston tactics. We've added a number of our own that other cities are copying. But Boston got there through 20 years of sustained strategy. And I'm hoping that whoever succeeds me sticks with the commitment we've made to the community policing, to the use of technology, to the use of the community violence intervention teams. The strategies that we have put together are driving the violence down, but it needs to be continued for another 10 years. I'd love to see the day when there's not 100 homicides in the city of Detroit, and I do think I will live to see that day. I talk a lot about the really great things that are happening with investment and development in the city, and the need to connect that more directly with what's happening to people in other parts of the city, even just as a demonstration to say this and this are related. In other words, it's connected. It's one city, not two. How can you do that? Is that possible?
I think the 600 block club presidents in the city would greatly disagree with what you just said.
Would they? Why?
Absolutely. They've had, again, the property values across the city have tripled in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't gone up. They've tripled.
Right.
I mean, they've been leading America, and that's because recovery has spread to every corner. But I will take you down Kercheval near McClellan, that was pretty much an abandoned zone 10 years ago, that is now filled with shops and housing. Take you down Rosa Parks, which was the site of the violence in '67, and you'll see a church has now been renovated as a very active restaurant community center, new apartments opening up. We can go down McNichols near Livernois, where 5 years ago, every one of those storefronts was covered by plywood. Now we have a new merchant bank. We've got new housing going up because the adjoining neighborhoods are there. Take you through neighborhood after neighborhood. East Warren, go check out Warren near Cadue and how that is as opposed to 5 years ago. All the new housing and restaurants, and they are driven by neighborhood groups, block clubs, and we are seeing a neighborhood development like we haven't seen in decades. And I do think people see that. Has it gotten to every corner of the city? No, but I never thought I'd see Dexter with what is happening there today, which will be, I think, the next recovering corridor in the city. And so I'm really proud of what's happened. We just opened over across from Clark Park. Beautiful La Jolla Gardens. And that park is spectacular. Again, that neighborhood, I can go one after another. So when you say, your neighborhood where you built on over in Tuxedo. I mean, did you ever think you'd see carpentry schools down the street?
Absolutely not. I tell everyone about how much that changed the neighborhood. But then, of course, you hear from folks who are saying, when is my turn? When is it going to happen where I live?
And so they were probably the neighborhood that said that to me the most was the Midwest neighborhood over near Tyerman and Livernois. And there's a lot of industrial area there. And I'd go there once a year. When we put the Joe Louis Greenway through there and opened it, and everybody along that greenway is fixing up their house, we actually have new houses being built in that neighborhood adjacent to the greenway. And that greenway is winding through abandoned railroad track that had been covered with scrap tires and is now coming back. And those neighbors are saying, I waited a long time, but you didn't forget about me. You've got one of the most beautiful parks in all of Michigan being built through my backyard. My backyard isn't a dump. It's now one of the nicest parks in the city. So again, I take issue with your statement that we aren't getting to neighborhoods. I'm in these neighborhoods all the time with people who are very proud of people in O'Hare Park and what's happened there with the way that park. I can go one after another, but 600 block club leaders have driven recovery of a whole lot of neighborhoods in this city. There are always going to be places where you could do more.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time with block club leaders who have accomplished a lot.
Do you feel like the next mayor is just building on what there is, or are there real challenges? I mean, I think a lot of people would say there's still real challenges here.
There's no question. I mean, we lost population every year from 1957, right? I mean, nobody said it was going to be the same in 12 years. But I think if the next mayor can continue the pace for the next 12 years that we've had for the past 12 years, the city is going to be a dramatically different place. And I am pleased to see all of the serious candidates for mayor talking about building on the progress, representing everybody. There's none of this us versus them divisive campaigning that used to define the city 12 years ago. And I think as long as, and you're seeing the council candidates the same way. I think if this city leadership continues down the path of unity and not division for short-term politics, this city is going to do really well in the next 12 years.
Yeah. 4 years ago, when you were running for your third term, we had a conversation, and I asked you about parts of government that you thought were still giving you fits and weren't making progress. And the one that you brought up was DDOT.
Right.
And you said that you just felt like you were not able at that point to basically catch us up on where you think that is now and what the next mayor.
Yeah, and so we have the right leader, Robert Kramer there now, who did a great job of straightening out the people mover. Almost a quarter of our riders pass through 8 Mile and Woodward. We built an indoor transit facility, which is extremely comfortable, upgraded that. We have a terrible time getting the buses on the street. We're building now a huge garage, maintenance garage, over on Schaefer that burned 15 years ago and has been sitting there empty, that is going to be state-of-the-art and open in the next year. Start to give them the basics of what they need. We have plenty of bus drivers now, and we got to get the buses in. And I did not appreciate the fact that during COVID, when ridership went down by 30% and service went down by 30% everywhere, we stopped ordering new buses because we had all of them in the garage. And now the ridership has come back, and getting enough working buses on the road is a problem. People have every right to complain about the levels of service. We've got 90 buses on orders now. First 45 are going to start coming in this summer. When they come in, we're going to add more service. But DDOT is an area that still has not improved as much as I would like, but I think for the first time...
Still a lot of people waiting on corners a long time for buses.
First time in 5 or 6 years, it's on the right track.
Yeah. What does the next leader need to do to right that? What's the opportunity there?
So it's going to be a lot of hyper-technical stuff, but people throw around the term bus rapid transit. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But in concept, what it means is this. You have a bus that you can board, get on and off quickly. As far as I'm concerned, I would like us to go to far more electronic passes getting on and off the bus. I wouldn't make it mandatory, but I would heavily discount your monthly pass so you don't have pieces of paper getting stuck in a machine or having to print off transfers or the like. And it means having a platform that's easy to get on and off. And so if you got a system where you increase the frequency and boarding and deboarding were really quick, you can speed up the frequency of service. That's what bus rapid transit is all about. We're going to roll out a version of it on Jefferson to prove how it can be done. SMART is very interested in doing it. You could see putting it on Grand River and Michigan, Gratiot on a combined arrangement. If people thought the service was frequent, it was on time, and it was clean and comfortable, I think ridership would pick up significantly.
The next mayor is going to take office in the second year of the second Trump administration. Things were really different for the last 4 years for Detroit, partially because of COVID, but also partially because of the relationship that you were able to take advantage of with the White House. Talk a little bit about how that changes and what that means for leadership in the city in terms of maintaining that momentum.
It just means that you have to run the city in a normal way. We did not have problems when Trump was the president. We were operating just fine. I stayed
How
off.
did you make that possible?
Again, we just did our jobs.
Yeah.
I stayed off his radar screens. I didn't pick fights with him. I didn't tweet and attack him. My style is not calling attention to myself by picking partisan fights. But we had, for example, demolition money that was awarded under Obama that continued through 2 years out of Trump.
Yeah.
We continued to manage it properly, and Trump didn't bother us at all. Ben Carson, was from the city of Detroit. I had him and his wife Candy over to the Manoogian for dinner, and we got funding to get lead out of houses in Southwest Detroit. There are ways to build relationships with the other party. Now, Joe Biden was a 1 in a million relationship between me and him. We're just very close personally, and it paid off for us in a big way. But we were doing just fine as a city before COVID hit under Trump.
You don't worry about the money not being the same. I mean, there's a lot of money coming to Detroit in the last 4 years in particular.
So most cities in America, when they got the American Rescue Plan money, poured it into their general fund to cover their deficits. In Detroit, we weren't running deficits. Even in COVID, we were running in the black. So every dollar that we took in, we spent on things that would have 10 years of value. We redid parks. We built rec centers. We took out the Packard plant, for example, things that are going to have long-term benefit. So the city is not going to have to ratchet down. And council was very responsible in all this, understanding we're going to use one-time money for one-time things. There's a lot of cities in this country that are right now looking at deficits in the next year because they didn't do that.
Yeah. In
the city of Detroit, we're looking at a city that's going to be left with $500 or $600 million in rainy day funds and reserves and a balanced budget. So
you're not worried about some of the other initiatives from Washington. If they ratchet that down, that's not...
Yeah. It's a fight we have every year.
Yeah.
So if they cut funding for affordable housing, every city in America is going to have to push back on that. If they cut funding for transit, every city in America is going to have to fight back on that. But Detroit's not going to be unique. We'll be dealing with the same issues as everybody else.
Yeah. Speaking of revenue, the revenue picture when you took office was a lot different than it is now. But there are some changes too, picking up pension payments again as a result of the deal we made to get out of bankruptcy. Tax revenue is growing, but not as much as maybe that we would have wanted to.
Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So when I signed up for the bankruptcy deal, income tax revenues were $200 million a year.
Right.
And Kevin Orr wanted me to sign up for 2% growth instead of 1% growth, which hadn't been the history of any growth.
Right.
I signed up for 2% growth. We were at $200 million. Do you know what we're going to do this year? $450 million.
Yeah.
So when you say it hasn't grown as much, going from $200 million to $450 million in 10 years.
Yeah, that's it's good.
And it's what funded the $10,000 police raise. It's what funded the other 320 cops. It's what funded your parks being cut all summer.
But what about, property tax revenue?
Property tax revenue has gone from about $100 million to about $150 million.
Yeah. Do you not think there's a revenue issue in the city?
Again, you can always do more.
Yeah.
But we're on a 12 straight balanced budget, 10 credit rating upgrades, and we're an investment grade credit rating. If Wall Street thought we had a revenue issue, we wouldn't be there. But you talk about the retirees, we put $400 million aside in the retiree protection fund.
Right.
We prepared for this, and I give council a lot of credit because you had years with people at council meeting beating up on council, spend more for this, spend more for that. Unlike past administrations, council was responsible, set aside that money for 10 years. We're now into our third year of paying the pensions. There's been no issue because we set aside that money. There's been good management financially.
So the next mayor does not inherit a fiscal cliff or a fiscal wall or something that is staring them in the face from your perspective?
There's not, objectively, there's no fiscal cliff, or you wouldn't have an investment grade credit rating. Now, are you going to be looking at the reality that you're probably looking at 3% a year in increased revenues and 3% a year in increased expenses on your costs? Yeah. That's running a business or running a government. That's every city in America.
Yeah. I also want to ask you about things that you encountered in the job that caught you by surprise. People can prepare for a lifetime for this job and not see everything that they're going to see sitting in that chair. What would you say to the people who are wanting to do that job about surprises or things they might not predict?
11 years of unbelievable support from the citizens of the city is not something any mayor
that's a good thing.
Could have expected. That was you asked me a surprise, though.
Right?
I can't believe the way I have been treated in every corner of this city.
Yeah.
And you can't underestimate the power of hope.
Yeah.
I mean, people believe the city was getting better. Drive around this city now, and you have people on ladders fixing up their houses in every corner. That's hope. That's not, there was a time when the only people fixing up the houses were the land bank.
Right.
Now, 90% of it is private citizens. But there's been so much, I mean, it surprises Jamie Dimon calling out of the blue, saying JP Morgan Chase are going to put $200 million in Detroit. Greg Jackson showing up in my office when I was going to demolish the Fisher 21 building, saying, I can save that building and put housing into it. And I held off on demo or skeptical, and now he's doing it. It has been Bill Ford calling up saying, I can restore the train station.
Yeah.
It's been 11 years of surprises, and they've been overwhelmingly really good surprises.
But no challenges that you think that a new leader might encounter that you couldn't prepare for, that you couldn't predict?
You know, a water main bursting at 5 in the morning, you're going to have to deal with. A COVID pandemic, certainly you couldn't have anticipated. There will always be some things. The difference was when the COVID pandemic hit, we had a balanced budget. We were financially strong. I could stand up that state fairgrounds and put through the testing because I had the resources to respond quickly. Had we been dealing with billions of dollars in deficits, I wouldn't have been able to react. But the coming mayor and council are not going to be financially limited to respond to surprises. They'll be limited by their own abilities, and based on the people I see running, I think they're going to do just fine.
Yeah. Are there departments that, other than DDOT, that you worry about in terms of their functioning under new leadership?
I don't want new leadership. We still are not where we should be in the permitting to open a new business in this town.
Everybody says that.
And so we are a lot better than where we were. You can now at least do your forms online and not have to stand in 4 different lines at City Hall. But I have the team now that is benchmarking the most efficient cities in Michigan. And I said, I don't want you to tell me you made it a little bit better than it was before. I want you to show me the best city in Michigan on permitting, and I want you to show me every step. Why do we have a step they don't have? Why do we have a fee they don't have? I think getting the culture of BSEED to make the permitting of new businesses a competitive advantage is something that I haven't gotten to effectively enough, something that I would be doing. A new mayor is going to have to deal with that, although I hope in the next 10 months to get them certainly a running start. But when I think about the things that haven't gotten done, Detroit Promise just aggravates the heck out of me that we have not made this a part of the culture.
The college scholarships for graduates.
Every kid in this city who goes to high school in the city has their college tuition guaranteed. And I just met with a group of 18 to 22-year-olds over at New Lab the other day, saying, how many of you knew at 13 and 14, it was there by 12th grade, your counselor's running around. And one of the women there says, I moved from Kalamazoo. In Kalamazoo, I knew at 7 years old about the Kalamazoo Promise that I can go to college. And we've done a lot of billboard and radio ads. We have not gotten into the schools and gotten people to understand that you have an enormous advantage being born in Detroit that your college is paid for. I haven't done a good enough job of that. And so that's something I'm going to work on this year. That's something the new mayor has to do. That Detroit Promise is a huge advantage.
A lot of the money is just kind of sitting there unclaimed.
So what happens is, I set up something 10 years ago. The law allowed you to take a portion of the growth in property tax revenues and set it aside in scholarship for kids. First year it was worth $200,000. Nobody paid any attention. Because of all the growth in the city, it's $6-7 million a year. And we got a lot of issues. One is, I want kids who are dropping out of school in 9th and 10th grade because they think there's no future. I want them to be thinking from the time they're 10 or 11 or 12, it's there for me if I want it. We extended it so it applies to certifications in the community colleges for different occupations, not just a 4-year degree. But you also have an enormous problem in this country, and then almost 80% of people who start community college don't complete their second year. We should be putting money into mentors, getting those students through that. And so I want to tear apart the Detroit Promise system and run it as a $7 million a year system, not a $200,000 a year system. The next mayor has an enormous potential advantage. If you get every 7- and 8-year-old in the city to know, when they run into their friends from the suburbs, I'm going to college. It changes the culture of the city. We'll check in again with you as we get closer to you exiting office. But thanks for being here with us. Good to see you.
Watch this full story and more at onedetroitpbs.org. Follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter for the latest news from Southeast Michigan.